Call the meeting to order at 7:03. I'm calling the public hearing to order, and Colleen Roy has a PowerPoint presentation for us to do a brief overview for our plan,
Oh, you can.
which was developed in 2020.
So this is a public hearing, so you have to call the public hearing to order, read the public hearing notice, all of that fun stuff, correct? Yes.
Okay.
We advertised a public hearing, so I think we should probably follow the,
Okay.
the rules.
I don't have do you have the copy of the, let me look on my phone.
Oh, if you don't, let me know. I have the Concom one if you need.
Well, it's like, we put it in the papers.
Oh,
I have it
okay.
right here.
Yep, I got you.
If it's okay with you, I will read it.
Sure.
Okay. The Grafton Community Preservation Committee, CPC, will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, beginning at 7 p.m. in the Conference Room A of the Grafton Municipal Center located at 30 Providence Road. This hearing is being held in accordance with the Community Preservation Act CPA requirements and is intended to assist in the CPC by collecting input from the public on the needs of the town in the CPA subject area of open space, recreation, community housing, and historic preservation. Additional information about the Community Preservation Committee is available at www.grafton-ma.gov on the CPC webpage. This was posted in the Grafton News on October 19th and 26th, 2023. And you gotta take a motion to open the public hearing.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Really?
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Clerk Curate.
I'm sorry. Is that unique to CBC? Because
It's all public hearings. So we posted that we were doing a public hearing.
Yep.
That's just how we do public hearings.
Okay, so I'm just asking simply because on conservation we have a very specific way. Called meeting to order. We have an opening statement, but it's not. And then we have each public hearing is done separately. So you're talking this particular part of this public hearing is for this very specific item, correct?
Yeah, that's how it
Okay,
was
okay.
posted. Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that.
It's just for the sole purpose of,
Gotcha. Sorry.
if there
Didn't
were,
understand
if
that.
there were an audience, for them to ask questions. and-
I get that. I was just like trying to equate what we do on a regular basis
Yeah.
to what we're doing here. That's
Yeah.
all. So I get it.
And she put together a little PowerPoint presentation.
So the full plan's available on the town website under CPC, but it's just a plan that describes the CPA and how it's done in the town of Grafton. It goes over the history of that's happened in Grafton, funding projections, and CPA tenets and limitations. And this was done in 2020, so some of the funding projections might not be the most up to date as a couple years have gone by. In the report, there's a working timeline where, like right now we're doing the optional grant writing workshop, which is, I guess kind of covered by this public hearing, but there's nobody here in person. I don't know if there's anybody on. Oh, it's no Zoom, so there's just nobody here for it. And then, it goes into just general CPA, project eligibility. It tells citizens that they're able to attend. Again, the history of some of the projects we've done. It goes over what the Grafton CPA guiding principles are. There's 4 of them. Those are the 4. I can read them, or I think we all probably know what they are. And then at the end, there's an overall summary of all of our overall goals and priorities when it comes to open space, affordable housing, and historic preservations. And, first, second, third priorities for a lot of these, which, I think is great. As I was reviewing this, like one of them jumped out to me at the affordable housing. One of our first priorities is to create or preserve SHI eligible affordable housing units. So something like the 59 Pleasant Street or Upton Street, that would have been a great project for us to send a letter of, recommendation, because that's a priority for us to see those SHI units get created.
So did they approach us seeking that?
No. I'm just saying, like, that's like an idea for us to do. It's a priority of us. We knew it was going on. I think people approached this committee to buy that land, so.
It was informal. There was never a formal
okay.
proposal for Pleasant Street.
Right. I'm not saying that
Because I
it was
think
just
what happened, and Ken could probably speak better to it, that a deal was worked out with the land trust to preserve some of the backland that was more desirable, and that the land that they were going to use to build on was not deemed as significant for land trust purposes in terms of the overall scheme of what they would like to see preserved.
Right, and that for the land trust, but for CPC, it's desirable because we see SHI units, so that would have been just something I'm saying in the future for us to keep our eyes out to maybe.
When somebody like, if there's a project that, for affordable, for historic preservation, that they have to fill out the form and they need to get the historic district commission to write letters. So whoever the proponent is needs to approach. So if there are people that want us to write those letters, I'm happy to have it at a meeting, discuss it, vote on it, and write a letter. Unless this is something that's on your radar for affordable housing, kind of that's your wheelhouse. If you see that and you want to tell us this is going on, we should write a letter for that. That's
Yeah, it's exactly.
if people internally want to say that, that's fine. But it's like people need to come to us to say we would like that. We need your support. Please write us a letter.
Right, exactly. So just in reviewing the plan, just seeing some of the priorities and ways that we can be accomplishing them. That was all.
If
And-
people bring it to our attention, then we can do that.
Fantastic. So that was that.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any questions? Yes.
Can you go to the first page, the title page?
Title page, yes.
So who's the community opportunity group?
That was a consultant that we hired that updated our plan.
Okay.
And we had multiple, this was during COVID, so there were Zoom type community outreach meetings that people, and we did have people come and we divide into groups and they would set priorities and talk about the various things that CPC funds. And that's how we were able to develop the plan that and then she actually came to some of our meetings that was in person, but it was all pretty much hampered by COVID.
Just as a note for people wondering, the like weird wrapping on this is not from what is actually published, just because my laptop is actually Linux, so it has a different font stuff than what was actually made this with. So it's just technical detail, but this isn't actually the way general people would see it.
On the town website or whatever.
Yeah.
Is this every like 10 years that we update it?
I would say that if part of our discussion now should be, do we want to have a study subcommittee or group that reviews this? And because I know I looked at it and it says if you have questions or whatever, Joanne Duncan.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it needs to be admin because we changed that to where there's an email that says admin, so it doesn't matter who it is, that email is accessible by the staff person, not the person.
Right. I think
But
adding
that's
a
just
yearly.
a minimal thing, but there's probably other things, like you said, that dollar amounts have changed, or other things might have changed that significantly impact this. And I don't know that I'd want to wait 10 years, but it's been 3. And if you feel like, after your review, if you feel like there are things that you think should be updated,
I think maybe we could offer just maybe a yearly amendment. It doesn't have to even be that long. Like, these are the projects we funded, which helped target some of our priorities, and just show the plan is being worked, and just a little bit of an update. And then in 10 years, a whole new plan. But over the last 10 years, this is how we've worked the plan while we've had it.
So and just having been involved in a lot of like strategic plans, if you take a strategic plan and put it on the shelf, it's worthless. You need to work it, and that doesn't, and it's depending upon what it's for. It is definitely a lot of variety, but having a check in once a year, but it has to be intentional and has to be dedicated to like really saying like, when you describe the goals, what are the action items?
Right. Which is in the plan.
Right, and then it's like who's responsible for those action items, and having a follow up to make sure it's on people's radar and to make sure it's being executed. So yeah, I get that we do these every so often and so forth, but to really get the value out of them, because they give you a lot. You read them the first time, but if you don't keep working it, it's a little bit hard to show progress, I
Right.
think.
Just to circle back to that affordable housing one, I know the Affordable Housing Trust is working closely with another project and they're using funds, which sure some of them have been CPA funds to go towards SHI eligible housing, so that could be another update to say, you know, where it is in that part of it.
One way that we can gather some of this information, the data, is from the annual report that we have to file, the CP3 or CP5, whatever it is now. So, because you categorize what the funding was.
Right.
So we can create a spreadsheet that is Appendix A, or, you know, however you want to insert that into this document.
Yeah.
So that it can, like, if you want to flip back to the page that has the right, the goals and the priorities. So it's like they would basically address each one of those. So you could say first priority is, you know, for the water resources, that we did do the work with the Quinsigamon, Lake Quinsigamon, or for the SHI eligible housing units, you know, whatever the projects are that the Affordable Housing Trust is working on. And then the last one, the common would be the most recent project that we did, and the cupola at the library. Yes.
So is this something like you intend to report out at annual town meeting, or is this just we do it internally once a year and then post it on our?
Well, it could also be included, this information would then go on this plan, but then we could also include it in the annual report that is included, which everybody gets at May town meeting.
Yeah.
So that, you know, we say we've done, but we do that, we'll say we worked on this project, or so
Yeah.
that's it's kind of already in there
Yep.
in the annual report, because we do say, oh, we finished this project, or we started this project. I'm not sure if it's saying what you want it to say, or as much as you want it to say.
It's not about what I wanted to say. It's what the committee wants to kind of just add to this and make sure that, you know, you guys did spend a lot of time. I attended some of these meetings, putting this plan together, spending money, getting it done. Now it's been 3 years, so let's just kind of work it. You know, it's it's a good plan. Let's just get our money's worth.
So you have, like, you know, a typical plan. I haven't looked at this in a while, to be quite honest. You have your goals, your priorities, and so forth. But without kind of data points or specific action items, you can get lost. And I don't think they have to be, it has to be reasonable. Like, you don't want to take on 30 things. You want to take on 1 or 2.
Right.
And have them, you know, identified and have a actual date of when that is, or per year or something. And again, this is a volunteer group here, so it's not like I'm suggesting we all spend an extra, you know, ton of time on this. But if you make it at the right level, you can see progress, and having regular check-ins and tracking that is key to demonstrate that the value of you know, this type of plan. So.
And I think certain projects lend itself to that rather than others. Like right now, the affordable housing has multiple projects that you know are either getting started, kind of in the middle of negotiations, but they're real. Mm-hmm. For a lot of these projects, it's like with the library, it's because there was a leak and it came up. They weren't saying, okay, in the next 5 years, we're going to ask you to redo the cupola. You know, it's like, that's our problem, is that it's things that come to us unless we know, or like there's some of them, it's acquiring the Robinson properties. Certain things like
That's a
that
perfect
on our
example.
radar.
Yeah, that's a perfect.
Other things aren't. And that's like with Ray and the Nipmuc Homestead. We know that's kind of on the radar that they're going to do another phase and another phase, but we don't know exactly what all those phases include and how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, but I don't get the sense that that's what it's asking us to do. I think it's just updating the known things from each year to year, so that in 10 years you don't have to look back and be like, what year was that? Did we do that? I know we talked. You know what I mean? Just to kind of check along. You know, you've listed off a bunch of things that we know we did. Like even the cupola, that's preventing the loss of a historic building or threatened assets.
But then, maybe then the best way to do this, because the way we're legally required to do this, is to file it with the state. So if that summary of those projects is that drop in for every year? Is that providing the information that you're talking about? Because
Okay.
it's saying that this was done.
So you keep saying that I'm talking about. I'm not actually advocating one way or another. This was something that I was asked to do, so I presented on it, and it shown an opportunity of something that we can do. And if you're already filing a report that you're thinking checks all those boxes, maybe that report just
But
gets
that report
included.
goes to the state. It's not put in here.
But
What I'm
we
saying
can
is
start including
if
it in
that
here.
can get then just transferred over as a appendix A or whatever for
Right.
2023, so that you can see annually this is what we expended our money on based on the project area.
Right.
If that's again, I'm not when I say you, I mean you, but not you.
Okay.
It's like that's what the goal is to provide that type of information. That's the information that you feel would be the best or helpful.
Yeah. Without seeing the report, it's really hard. But it sounds like the way you're describing it.
Basically, it's you go in and you have to check off all these boxes. It's like, what does it fall under? How much was it? Where's it located? So you're giving geographic information, you're giving financial information, and you're describing the project.
Project database. If I go and look on that,
Right.
that's what it is.
Right.
Similar to that.
That's what it is.
Oh, all right,
That's
fantastic.
what when I type that in, that's the system spits that out.
Okay.
And I could see us having a slight addendum and a summary for just our report, in addition to what we're sending to the state, just saying, okay, these are the things, but this checks our, first priority for open space, or is our second priority, and why, in brief, like a sentence or two, why is it, meeting that? And, in addition to the, for further details on the project itself, but just a, quick.
I totally agree with that, and it's more setting up for the next plan, so that someone can go back over and say, without spending a heck of a lot of time. And again, I'm not talking like doing all this work. Talking about just putting everything in one succinct place, and showing that we are meeting some of these priorities, and we're missing others, and maybe at some future time, when it gets updated, then it's like, is this still a priority, and why haven't we met it? And I understand the whole thing is we're not proposing projects, but again, it's what can we do, or why is this not happening? So it's just kind of those type of broad planning kind of perspective.
Okay, I'll try to see if I can't find out because I'm not sure how you can. I think you can get an Excel spreadsheet from the website, the state website, because the way it's put in, it's not chronological. Even though you put it in chronologically, if you search that, it's not chronological. It's odd. It's really odd.
There's filters you can add to it.
But
Yeah.
for me, just to pull, what I will do is try to pull out whatever I just put in 2 months ago, and then we'll share that with everybody, and then we'll have the affordable housing. We'll let you jump on that, and again, see how it addresses the priorities. We'll let Ken and maybe see do the open space. And Chris, I mean, however the projects lend themselves.
Yeah.
Again, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but it's just like,
Right. It's
you know,
building.
but that way, it's the experts are dealing with, and then we'll let Paul, since he's not here, do the historical.
Just building a story of what, not only of what our goals are, but how it's being executed, and it's more just information. If anyone has questions, it's especially being transparent. These are the things. Yeah, these are the areas that didn't get accomplished, but that's okay because we did all these. And is there a reason why? And the reason why may be just a discussion about it's not something that's happening here in Grafton or something.
But then it'll help to justify as priorities do change, because we're so limited on what our priorities can be. But if we show 10 years of SHI affordable housing, it's like, okay, well, maybe we can tweak it a little to something else because we've accomplished this goal 10 years in a row. It's a laudable goal, but or if you don't create any, that's going to stay number one because we're having troubles doing it.
I wonder if there's like an opportunity to, like, how the finance committee does like the state of the town. Obviously nothing that detailed, but maybe we could talk to the moderator about just giving a brief highlight of like completed projects since the last town meeting. and it's just kind of like a rolling thing. Like, hey, we, completed the cupola is now restored. We added 20 acres of preserved space. Just something high level. I think it would be
Just a
good.
visual,
Yeah, because I think town meeting they always they hear the request for money, but there's not that closing of the loop at town meeting of hey, this project's done, we have a new playground. I think that might be good to highlight.
And
Yeah.
we've talked about in the past how people don't realize what projects in town over the past 20 years were afforded by the CPC.
Yeah.
So,
Great
we
idea.
have signs in some places, we're talking about signage, but
That
def-
doesn't cover everything.
no, I definitely think a visual slide, 5-minute presentation that says, this is what we did with your money this year. Bang, bang, bang.
So, I think we previously talked about having this, flyer handout at town meetings. We did that for the first time this May, and that is one method of that. I do,
think that the visual is better than the flyer. I don't know,
I
because I think I took most of them home.
The flyers.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I
that nobody
yeah,
cares.
I'm not. I do think visuals, great. I just think to myself a little bit on if every committee in town, went to do a presentation at the beginning of the town meeting. Everyone's doing great stuff, but how many people are going to tune out after the first one?
But
But it
not
isn't
every committee has
it's
taxpayer money.
this-
No, I know that. I'm not
Some
saying that's a bad idea.
accountability.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just kind of in my head, and we do have the report in the actual book that everyone gets, but how many people read every?
I think,
Yeah, what may speak, work for what you say is that every spring, the town, we do a CPA budget. We do the reserves, and, people get up and talk sometimes when articles are done.
Yes.
And somebody could get up and talk at that point and do what you were just describing.
Yeah.
That could work.
but I agree with what I think a lot of people were saying, short and sweet,
Yep.
visual, that we addressed these two or all three issue, funding
Buckets, yeah.
for CPA, and we did the cupola, we did this, and we did this.
Yeah, and
Thank
so,
you very much. We appreciate your support.
yeah, now here's,
Oh, yes, again.
now here's our reserve article.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
So I think I think people will recognize, yeah, I saw that, I see that every day, but I didn't realize you paid for it. Or I paid for it, as a taxpayer,
Yeah.
So can I just ask a brief question? So if the cupola, say, for instance, is not completed by spring town meeting, we wouldn't include that, right?
Maybe discretion.
Well, we can
We
did
can
money,
show
but I'm not sure the
photographs
rest
that it's
of
in
the money is
progress.
coming.
If it were, if it were
again-
substantively completed, if it had visuals.
But it depends on how far along it is in the
Okay.
project, and
Like 95 North Street would be a good one. Like, oh, they, started this, or there's some lumber that got delivered, whatever, like
Yeah.
wherever,
Yeah.
what phase it ever it's in,
because some of them, it might be a 2-year project, so
Right.
you do want to kind of keep the public eye on it,
Okay.
but again,
I think the great idea is great because people have no idea what this group does and where the money goes. So I think it's an excellent idea.
I was, I volunteered to be on this committee. I had no clue. I've learned, and I'm still not, great depth of knowledge about it, but at least I have a very different appreciation of it.
The counterpoint for good visuals is like the Lake Quinsigamon project that we funded. That's just weed abatement. The only real thing we would be able to find is a better better than us taking a picture of Lake Quinsigamon's weeds. A stock photo of aquatic weeds is probably the only thing that could come close there.
And
But,
all that jazz.
that's the only one I can think of. So in recent times, that is probably harder to visualize, or like the getting plans for the Cisco homestead would also be a little bit harder for your average town meeting attendee to visualize, because not everyone can visualize a architecture plan.
Right. Yeah, those are definitely before and afters.
Yep.
Yeah. Or maybe it's a paragraph with, this is why we did it, type
Yeah.
of, the historical essence of why that project was approved. So, so you can do different things, but you don't want to get into a lot of words.
Right.
so getting back to the plan itself, what are your thoughts of annual, every few years, whenever you think it needs to be done, in terms of reviewing the plan that we have now?
Well, there is that handy dandy timeline in the plan with a calendar that breaks it all out. So I didn't look.
No, but in terms of, is that something you think that we should do now?
In preparation for the spring.
Well, just, it says internally for us, do we want to take a look at this plan and go through it and say it meets what our needs are? We need to update, do some housekeeping on some things, or it pretty much is where it needs to be? Do we want to
Oh, I see
undertake
what you're saying.
that?
Okay.
The plan itself? Do we
The-
want to review the plan?
The housekeeping items that you called out were the email and contact for sure should be updated with some kind of amendment. But I think the overall plan is still pretty, still pretty fresh enough as far as these plans go. I don't think there's a lot of need for revision in that sense. Just the contact. But I think the need of just making sure we're all familiar with the plan and highlighting, like Eric said, the ways that we're working the plan. I think that would be really good for everyone.
The only other thing I could think of that might be good to kind of go over is just double check the timeline that is in the plan and make sure that every item on the timeline is something that both we expect to still do and that we actually just do it on the timeline that it says. If we don't think we can, then we make a modification there.
Yeah, I think any plan like this is simply a guidebook.
Yeah.
And you're gonna find different things or different ways, or it should be a flexible, document where, there's room to like shift. I'm not saying totally redo something, but, adjust as you go because the next plan will include whatever those adjustments are.
Yeah.
So I wasn't here when you guys voted on this, but the task calendar is like extremely detailed. Like the first Monday in March, the second Monday in March. You know what I mean? Like, is there a reason you guys did it that way?
I think we had like May 15th, or, that we decided, rather than giving a date that we gave, and I don't know if I can pull it
Like
up.
you would think we were meeting 3 or 4 times a month looking at this calendar. And we just know that not to be true. So I'm just curious why you guys voted to do it that way.
I think for the project deadlines, it was from my memory on stuff, and of course other members here can tell me if they remember differently, but is that the intent is the project, requests and stuff get into the admin early enough that they can verify that it meets, the very basic, paperwork requirements for us, as well as we can have it sent to the committee and reviewed before our actual meeting. That was, these were the project requirement dates, I think, was
And I think because we initially did have dates on there, because I had done like a spreadsheet like this long before we had this plan, just so that I know what we should be doing, basically, because we have town meeting and we need to back things up to have the warrant articles. And then this got fleshed out a whole lot more with this report. And this was more just to help the admin say, okay, I need to know, like the first week of January, I need to be working on preparing the annual report. Even though it's not due till end of February or whatever, at least you're getting started on it. It's just a tickler. It's just to kind of get started. It's not like it has to be done on that day.
Okay.
And then the Thursdays, obviously, that's when we meet. So that's why it says fourth Thursday.
So like I'm just looking at November, right? So November has the publicity for the grant writing workshop, project applicant updates, quarterly report, do the annual grant writing workshop, and review and sign the monthly financial management report. So is that the treasurer's report? Is the monthly
No,
financial management
that-
report?
I think the that report has, Anita did those. We used to get them once a month. And that's what you gave me. It's a different animal to all of this right now, but the chairman of the committee was supposed to review it and sign it and send it back and indicate whether there were errors, and they would correct. So you're making sure things are posted correctly. That's what that is.
So the committee doesn't see that?
No, that's like either the treasurer or the chairman, or the two of them together are making sure that bills are posted correctly.
Okay.
the quarterly updates, that's like a goal. It never happens. It's like that the proponents of projects, we just have we have two, one from South Grafton Playground and the Recreation Commission, that those are pretty much, those projects were finished out. And so they sent, in an ideal world, we would be getting it. This is more to also ping us that if you're overseeing a project, that you need to make sure that you're reaching out to your the person, the grantee, to say, where's the project? Do you have photographs for me? You know, it's like, what can I do to help you? How are things going? So that when we do at the end of the meeting, we have all the reports. Somebody from this committee is updating us on what's going on with the various projects. That's what the project applicant updates. Because it's like, it's hard to say for somebody, an applicant, you have to file, we don't want to make this a big bureaucratic bunch of red tape where every quarter you need to send us a official report. It's like, we need an informal report. You can send us a short email, a couple paragraphs, tell us where things are. If you have some photographs, that would be great, so we can put them on the website.
Okay.
And that's all that particular line means. December 3rd, update CPC plan. There you go.
Yep. Nice and purple.
We're ahead of schedule.
But I think this was to literally everything, including the kitchen sink, was thrown into
Yeah,
this. So that this is everything that we are doing, should be doing, can do throughout the year. Maybe sometimes you don't have to do certain things, but it's all there so that whoever's, in the admin position knows, I need to make sure that advertisement goes out for the public hearing.
Okay. So if we're doing housekeeping on the task calendar, it calls out the Pell Farm and the townhouse bond payments in March. They're going to be on there for quite a while, but I didn't know if I don't know how granular we want to get. But again, this doesn't have to be a conversation for right now. I think we did the high level overview of what this is. I think we did a nice refresher for ourselves, and if we want to do the plan update, like we kind of touched on, maybe have that be on the December meeting, or maybe we've already done it accidentally now and have it ready for the spring. I don't know how everybody feels.
It probably doesn't hurt to have it on our December meeting, at least for my opinion, as an agenda item, and we try to just, everyone reviews the plan and see if there's anything that we want to call out as a thing to update.
I would think maybe like a subcommittee or just somebody going through it and then proposing stuff might be better. Just because if everybody's like throwing stuff into a public meeting, that can take quite a lot of time. It's just my opinion.
So I read update the plan as what we were just talking about, adding a quick addendum, but maybe everybody's interpreting that differently.
There's some, basic things that need to be updated. They should be updated.
Yeah.
But I think, the plan is still relatively new, that we should continue, and, if there's, when we kind of put in kind of the yearly kind of update, it's not meant to update the plan, it's a rolling of what's going on and looking to the future or something, as opposed to, it's more just working the plan as opposed to having to always revise it.
Yeah.
But if there's basic information that needs to be updated, that's different.
Yeah, I think the update the plan in my mind was both the basic information like the admin email and adding the addendum stuff that we talked about, but at the same time, at least for me, just ensuring that the calendar that is in the plan, even though this is a rolling plan that was created, is accurate. Because I think if we are publishing a calendar somewhere that is intended to be an accurate current thing, like the plan is, the calendar should also be accurate for what we're planning to do and when. And it sounds like it mostly is accurate, but just to kind of look at it and make sure is probably useful.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Can I have one question? Should we ask, there's no one here, but there's no one online, right?
We're not on Zoom.
This is
Okay.
not a hybrid
Okay,
meeting.
so I was just thinking about public comment, but if there's no one here, then, just asking the question,
Safe
that's all.
bet. Safe
My
bet.
Yeah.
only question is that I think this is probably a PDF, right? But this document is not, so that I needed the preservation plan that's posted on the website. So that, how do we make these housekeeping changes?
We'll
My-
figure it out.
My
That's
memory
the
is
easiest
that
part.
yeah, my memory
I'm sure she
is
sent us an email with a Word document or
yeah,
something.
my memory is we did get an actual PowerPoint document that has the full plan in, or a Word document or whatever it was, and we published it as a PDF because it's easier for the public to access that way.
I can turn PDF back to Word.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't want to have
We don't wanna-
an editable,
Oh,
Word
no,
doc out
website,
there, you
yeah.
wanna have it
No,
in-
it's like,
as
that's
a-
why
Just
we want,
repost
it's
it
like,
as a
as a
right,
PDF,
otherwise
yeah.
we'll have lots of changes.
And even if you don't edit a PDF back to Word, it's possible to add pages to a PDF without.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Public hearing ended at 7:39. Open the regular meeting. And Ken, treasurer's report.
Okay, so, this morning when I woke up, I saw an email from Mary Loria, and I could tell right away that she was confused, and there was, she had a misconception about something that she did, and I would like to talk about that. Oh, I sent the email, which you all got, but I would like to talk about that, but first, I think it would be more useful for us to go through the regular treasurer's report, and then people would be more, that will help familiarize people again with the CPC finances and how they work, and then it will help people understand what Mary did. So, this month, I'd like to go through 3 different fiscal years. And the reason is because fiscal 2023 has just closed. And I talked in August about how CPC finances are mandated in the Act in a way that committees are charged with making estimates about what revenue they're going to bring in for the next year. And there's a method for doing that that's prescribed. And there's really only there's really only like 2 inputs to that process. One is what's the most recent revenue number that was reported to the Department of Revenue for the most recent state match, and from that you make projections about just by increasing it by 2.5% per year, we make projections for what we're going to make in the next year. And the kind of the confusing thing is that for a given year, we can't use this year's revenue for next year because we don't know what it is yet, because it's still it's still happening. So we have to use the prior year and update it 2 different years to go into the future. And then with that, the Act allows the towns, or mandates the town can make reserves on that money so that they can start granting it and spending it as the year starts and not wait till the year ends. So it's kind of a magic thing where you get to spend the money as it's coming in or even before it comes in. But then when the year closes, you settle it all up. So we're looking at fiscal 2023 here, the year that just closed. And if you have a hard copy with you, or perhaps you can just see it on the screen, as you might recall, the first section of the report are current revenues. And it starts out with saying, what's the estimate of the surcharge that we're going to have? What's the estimate of the state match? What's our estimate for interest? And that's the total estimated revenue. And from that, we make our 10% reserves. Sometimes we pay bonds, and then we take the remainder of that and we put it into what's called the budgeted reserve, or the fiscal year budgeted reserve. And then we get to make grants off of that all year long. And in 2023, we made grants in May for the Universalist Church, for the South Grafton Playground in May, and in October we did the Lions Club and the North Street project. And so that left, and so we started the year. I'd say we made we did the reserves, and there were $77,000 for the 310% reserves and 24 for the admin reserve, and that left 517, and that went into the budgeted reserve account from which we spent the money I just mentioned. And at the end of the year, that left $22,000. Now, at the end of the year, that $22,000 flushes into the undesignated fund, and in the treasurer's report, I have a bunch of hidden lines that are colored yellow, and those are for updating the estimates. And so you can see that now that the year was closing, I uncovered these two lines here, and what it just shows is the $22,000 that's left over getting spent, flushed down into the undesignated fund down below, that you can see down here. Then, so the next block that we have are the carried over funds, and these are what the Act calls the undesignated fund balance. And the Act has a lot of jargon in it, and the accountants copied the jargon into our accounting structure, and that made it into our annual report, into our treasurer's report, and I apologize for the jargon. But this is basically the fund that holds all the money that we haven't spent prior. And everything rolls into it at the end of the year, all the reserves except the 310% reserves, just fold back into it, and everything else starts at zero. But this fund will carry over from the prior year. And so this year in 2023, the initial balance was $875,202. And if we click back to 2002, and we look at the ending balance, there it is. That was the ending balance from 2002. So that just carried forward into 2003, the beginning. And there it is.
Do you mind if I ask a question real quick?
Please, yes, please just speak up.
Sure. So on this particular number, on August 3rd, that number was different, and then it was different on September 20th, and then today's technically
Yes,
up.
and
So that number has changed three different
And I'll
times.
show you how that changes.
Okay.
Right now. Okay. So, but basically, in October, we didn't do any grants against the undesignated fund in May, but in October there were those three, and you can see them highlighted there.
But it was for $63 is the number that had changed.
Right. So now, since the year was closing, and in August it was in the process of being closed, it was not completely closed, and I was getting updates from Mary Loria about some of these numbers that some of the actual numbers that we used to correct the estimates. And I'll show you in the orange are the numbers that we plug in, and you can see that this is the actual surcharge, and that it turns out is the number that if you look at the little note, it's the number that the accountants use to file the CP1 form, which is where the town tells the state how much our revenue was from which to make the state match. That's the official final number. This number in August was still evolving, and Mary was giving me updates on this number, and it seemed to change, every time that she did some more work on the close, it changed. And so that's why in August it was one number, and in September it was $1,300 different, and it's because Mary gave me an updated number. The actual state match goes into this column here, and it just says that what's the difference between the state match we estimated and the actual, and it just makes a correction.
So just a quick question. So you're getting these updates. Is the updates driven by where the money is? What's driving it going up and down? Is it interest rates? Is it what's what is what's making
Or is it money that's
that?
actually collected? It's like people are slowly getting their taxes.
Actually, it's neither of those things.
Okay, I'm just asking.
As Mary, when the year ends, there's a lot of flux in the accounting system, and Mary works at it and works at it and works at it, and she, you know, and she gets everything settles out, and things go like this a little bit, and at the end they settle. And in August I got a number like this. In September I got a number like this, and this year, and now that it's actually closed, I got a number like this, and it changed again a little bit.
Okay.
So
I'm just curious. I know very little about accounting, but I always think of numbers in accounting as a number or a balance. And so when I see it,
yeah, but she's got to figure out this account's supposed to go here, and this account's supposed to go here, and this comes in from this from here, and she validated this number, and she validates that number, and they change a little bit until the close happens, and then they're locked.
right? But bottom line is this isn't a number coming from this committee. This is a number being given to us by the town.
That's
council.
correct.
Okay.
And now the number's official. The number went to the state. It isn't changing. That 617,947 is the number, and so. The state match, we knew about a little, we know about the state match earlier, so those numbers get corrected earlier. They'll get corrected by the end of November. And sometimes we get guidance and we change them. If the guidance is material, we'll change them ahead of time. And then there's actual interest. And I'd just like to point out that we always say we're going to get $20,000 of interest, and it almost always comes out in the 30,000 range. But we don't know that until the end of the year. And so that interest number got locked down. And so if you roll, and the actual administrative expense, we say 24, we actually used 6,276.
Gotcha.
And so all those numbers are now closed. They're official, they don't change. And so what happens is that comes down to these all affect the undesignated fund balance. And when you're done, we come out with a number that is the ending undesignated fund balance for the closed year. And that rolls into the next year. And that's, as these numbers fluctuated, you kept seeing that number fluctuate a little bit.
Well, I saw a lot of different numbers fluctuate over the last number of reports.
Right, it was that number in particular fluctuates, and that ripples, and that rolls into the next year. So this year is closed, and it turns out that these adjustments were all net positive. The only thing that was negative was a state match, but that got increased by an additional state match. So one of the things that you can say about these corrections is that they're all upside. And so, the state procedure mandates that we make conservative estimates, and so these corrections are upside corrections. And so this 274 number for the undesignated fund balance rolled into 2004 right here, and that changed a little bit. Again, not a big percentage, but it changed a small percentage, and that's why it changed. It's because the corrections coming in from the accounting close process.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Because we're in that section right now. Other revenue adjustments, what is that actually describing? And can there be a narrative added to that? Like what's being adjusted? A revenue fund,
Yeah.
budgeted fund, a designated fund? I don't know what's being adjusted there.
To tell you the truth, the process that the accountant uses is actually far different than this. This process assumes that when a grant is made, it's gone. And it's gone until it closes and maybe a little comes back, but it's gone. But the accountant is rolling all sorts of things through the undesignated funds, which are, I think, insanely complicated. And sometimes it's a lot of work to figure out what they are. And so when there's an issue that's really, really small, like this one, $250, that's a weird number. It's exactly $250. It's like no sense.
Yeah.
And
in the last report.
I have not figured out what that is. And I suspect it's actually a project closeout, which would put it into the second row down. I think it's probably a project closeout, but don't know.
So what made you change it today from what it was in September? Because in September it was $1,300.
The $1,300, the $1,302 was entirely explained because the actual surcharge number that Mary gave me was updated by exactly that amount.
But this format doesn't really.
between then and now. She said, the correct actual surcharge number is this, which happened to be $1,302 more.
Right.
And so it zeroed that right out.
So this format, which is very comprehensive and you clearly put a lot of work into it, doesn't really lend itself to explain what you're explaining now. Is there any way we can be adding a little bit more information?
Well,
as far as,
for this particular section, you don't want to know. In fact,
But I
most
do,
of the
that's why I'm
year,
asking.
let's see, most of the year I do this for this section. I just hide
Yep.
it because the numbers all add up without it, and it's making the sausage. So I'd like to move on, and I'll explain. You can ask more questions whenever you want, but I'd like to move on right now just to tell you that the last section is the reserve funds, and they do not change at the end of the year. They are what they are, and they, we add to them in the spring. We make grants from them, and then then they are what they are when they're done, and then they roll
Except for
into the next year.
Administrative appropriation, that goes away.
The administration appropriation does go away, and that rolls into the back into the undesignated fund right here
Because of what's not.
on line 44. It rolls into that's where it is. It's saying that we only spent $6, so $17,000 went back.
But open space, historical and affordable, every year it's gonna keep increasing unless we spend it down, where the admin goes back into the pot to then get
Right, because it's a budget line item
Right.
and it's not spent, it goes back. And
Right.
Okay, so I'd like to point out one thing that just sort of came to light. Ever since this committee started, ever since the Affordable Housing Reserve was created, the Affordable Housing Trust was created, the town has been transferring the fiscal year reserve at the end of the year. And why? I don't know. It's always, they've always done it that way since the beginning. But in discussions with Stuart, it occurred to me that that's not required. We could transfer it at the beginning of the year. And the net effect of that would be is that if we started next year, that they would get a double hit in May. They'd get twice the normal amount in May, but that'd be only 1 year and after that they'd just be getting the same amount that they would be getting every year. And I actually
I mean,
recommend.
you say beginning of the year, you're meaning July 1st.
Right,
Fiscal year.
right, at July 1st. So I'm going to recommend that next year we change things a little bit and we transfer the Affordable Housing Trust at the beginning of the year instead of at the end of the year. So next spring, we will be transferring the 2024 end of the year transfer and the 2025 beginning of the year transfer in the same meeting.
So just a question, if transferring it, does what's sitting there get interest on it? And when it goes to housing, I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
if what's motivating, is it a way to, add, even though not a huge amount, but.
I don't think that was the motivation, but that would be the effect. And so that the interest would be slightly less. But it really it's money that hasn't come in yet. So we don't get interest on money that hasn't come in yet. And so I'm not sure what the interest effects of that are. Good question, though. So that being said, the final section is a summary that tries to make it super simple. And it just basically says, we ended the year with $875,000 coming from in the undesignated fund, the end of the prior year. We had, our reserves were, from last year were this much. So the prior year, we ended with $1 million. Our revenue this year was $774. Those corrections to the revenue that we made, the corrections to the estimates were a positive $96,900. And so at the beginning of the year, we had $1.9 million. And we made these grants. We had bond payments, grants, expenses, no grant returns. And so we granted or otherwise spent $1,000,004, and it leaves the end of the year with $457,794. And that's the end of fiscal 2023.
Line 65, what does that mean?
Good question. That is, it's supposed to say remaining fiscal 2023 historical reserve, and I must have overtyped it.
But $4 means what exactly?
It's not, that $4 is nothing. I must have been
Typo.
trying to type a 4 someplace,
Okay.
and I typed it in the wrong cell, and I obliterated the label on that cell. Good point.
But that's not the historic reserve?
It is the historic reserve.
Oh, okay.
I wonder if I hit a Control Z, if that will go back. Where'd it go? It did. I just typed a Control Z and undid it. And I must have typed the 4 here while I was talking.
So the email the town accountant sent, she uses a different type of Excel that it shows all this information in a much more condensed way. That is there a way to make this format just a little bit easier to digest? Because I do feel like it, like you say, a lot of lines reference each other in different parts in here, and it doesn't flow in a way to me that makes this easy to read, and it lends itself to, like, when a lot of numbers are changing, to questions.
Okay, let me answer that question in a few minutes, okay? I'll come back to that. So moving on to 2024. Now, 2024 is an open fiscal year, and so the results of the surcharge revenues is not known yet. However, we have made all of the grants we're going to make in 2020 for fiscal 2024, and so we can start to do some corrections. Just to review 2024, we had made a surcharge estimate according to the rules of $594,070. We picked a low number for state match, lower than the previous year, and we picked 20,000 for interest because we always do. And that came up with $736.99. The 10% reserves are 10% of that, rounded up, rounded to the nearest 100. And then we decided the administrative reserve. We decided to do 24,000, and the bond payment 62.5. And these were all taken from what's called estimated revenue, and they're done that way every year, and the wording says fund these from estimated revenue, and they're all the same. However, so just going forward, then once that is subtracted from the $736.99, the remainder, which should have been $429,000, was mistyped, and Mary Loria got these numbers right in the article, but she somehow, instead of writing that number off the worksheet she was using, she wrote this number, $70,515 less. And I know how she made the mistake. And I talked about this in August. But basically, there was a meeting with Mary Loria and Paul, who was the treasurer, John, and myself in March. And there is a worksheet that makes these numbers, that does the calculations. And she came to the meeting with a proposal for the worksheet, but she had taken the revenue year wrong, and so it wasn't correct. And at the meeting, we corrected it and came up with these numbers. When she filled out the numbers on the message to the town, she wrote the right 10% reserves. She wrote the right admin and Pale Farm bond fund numbers, but she took the number for the budgeted reserve amount from her first spreadsheet, not the one that we came up with. And so that's how the mistake was made. She took it from the wrong spreadsheet. And so we talked about this. Mary and I discovered this in August when I became treasurer again, and talked to Mary about it. We emailed back and forth, and she determined that the mistake was not critical, that the money would flush into the undesignated fund at the end of the year. The committee has enough funds in all these accounts so that we would never need it, and we did not. And so we decided just to let it go. And we talked about this in August. It's on this report in two places, one right there, and actually three places. It's also like right down here in the summary because it had to make it add up. But so in any case, then we went on. There was when we went to FinCom for the October meeting, it was uneventful. But at one point, somebody did ask about what's that thing? And this was in front of FinCom. Evan was there, and I didn't want to embarrass Mary in front of everybody, so I kind of brushed off the question. But I didn't want to say because Mary made a mistake, so I just said a few things and stopped talking, and then everybody moved on. So, in any case, time has gone on. Okay, but leaving that, I just want to report that we made some May grants, we made October grants, and that leaves $47,000 in the budgeted reserve, and that's fine. At the end of the year, this budgeted reserve, I'm anticipating when they do the close, it's going to flush into the undesignated fund, leaving zero here. There was a few things we know. We know nothing about the revenue, so that number is the same, and we're saying that there's no current correction for this number. We don't know anything. The actual state match, we don't know yet. But we do know that the 21% that we thought we were going to have is only going to be 20%. But that's a change, and then we don't know anything else. And so this is just going to stand here until more numbers come in. Next month, we'll know what the actual state match is, and that's going to change the undesignated fund that carries forward into the next year. And when the revenue numbers come in, and we know how much we spent for this and that, this number will change again, rippling forward into the next year. And so we can expect that that's going to happen. And a suggestion was made that we add some comments in here to clear things up. So I added a note here saying that the source for the initial undesignated fund balance is the prior year, and it's updated when the prior year gets closed by accounting. And so you can expect this number to float around a little bit, and it'll almost always float up. So we won't be seeing this, we won't be seeing 2024 again, probably until this time next year. But, so now the committee's looking forward to 2025 for the Springtown meeting. And so so what I did is I have a projection for what 2025 is going to look like. I made some estimates for the surcharge based on the formula that we're supposed to use. And then, said, well, just for, I have no reason to think it isn't going to be 20%. So I guess the 20% state match, 20,000 for interest, 10% reserves, administrative, etc. And what this shows is that we have $795,000 of new revenue expected to come in. Now, it's probably going to be more than that, but that's a good working number for us to think about. And so on the carried over funds, this is the $392,000 that we think we're going to end next year from. And again, that will change as we learn more about what's going to happen at the end of 2024. This number will change, and we can expect it to change.
And there will be several projects that close out with money left in, and so that will
also increase also bump it up.
So to kind of boil it down, you have a fiscal year that just closed, that's actual. You have basically estimates for the current one we're in, And then for 2025, we have a projection based on the estimates, which is based on what we did previously.
You got it. You got
Okay.
it. You got it. So, but the good news is, and I'll wrap this up right now, is that it looks like we've got $1,200,000 to work with in for next spring and next fall, which is a pretty good amount of money. We can pretty much do anything that the committee contemplates. That's good news.
Right, and you've kind of, I know that you've mentioned this before, is that you never spend up to that amount.
We've never,
Just because there are so many, as an engineer, the more layers of assumptions you do, the more errors you have. So
Right.
it's just like, yeah,
so when we pick accounts to take funds from, I always try to leave a bunch of money left over. I try to never get them too close because I don't want to overdraw these accounts. And so if, like in 2024, we spent it down to $47,000. That was, yeah, spent it down to, spent it down to $47,000, and I didn't want to go any lower for those reasons.
right.
The undesignated fund usually got more in it, and so just try to pick a fund to balance those out so that we don't get too close to the bottom.
Yep.
And that's kind of what happened in with Mary. What Mary did was, this was in 2024 in the spring, Article 20. She got these right and she got that one wrong. But that left 358 and we did not use all of it. But when she was doing her updates for what happened in the town meeting, she had taken this one here. And instead of doing it from estimated revenue above the budgeted reserve line, she took it out from the budgeted reserve. And that $62,000 is more than 47. And she's saying, whoa, the account's overdrawn. But it's overdrawn because she did not take it from the account that was specified in the warrant.
Could she fix that with a journal entry?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, if the warrant were wrong, it would have been bad. But if the warrant's right and the accounting is wrong, that's easy to fix.
So we have two bond payments. Why is one coming from one source and another coming from another? Why aren't both bond payments coming from the same bucket?
It really it depends on how big the buckets are. They would
like a
each come
pretty
from.
big bucket
They
the
could
Pell
each come.
bond
They
comes
have
from.
3 buckets they could come from. Or actually, they have a lot of buckets, but they could come from the reserves. And those are what you're referring to.
Yep.
Or they could come from the.
Budgeted reserve, or they can come from where you took the Pell bond.
Right.
So I'm wondering why you're separating them.
Well, if you kind of look at the bottom there, these are the fiscal years just get added to. They just get added to new tabs. And just running back a long ways here, let's look at 2011. They came from the bond payments came from up there. One of them did anyway. And in 2012, it came from the bond payments came from there. And I went back while we were talking, and I looked at and found out that the bond payments were taken from anticipated revenue in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22,
Only
and 24.
One bond payment was.
One or both. One or both.
So why are we doing it inconsistently?
The reason that
Could you?
there,
I don't know
there's a
what
good
number
reason.
we're talking about.
So
right
there's
now.
two bond payments. We have the Pell bond payment, and then we have the One Grafton Common payment. So the One Grafton Common payment is captured lower in the report, where the Pell bond is captured up above, and that's what's creating a difference in numbers and how the email we received from the town accountant was generated, because she has it accounted for in one place, Ken has it accounted for in another place, and then the two bond payments are being accounted for in just two separate places, where I feel like the bond payments should be coming from the same bucket of money, while Ken is saying they have the ability to come from different buckets, which is correct. They're not coming from any consistent buckets. So if the Pell bond, and just to eliminate confusion in years going forward, could both bond payments be coming where you put the Pell bond, because that's the biggest bucket?
No, because the Pell is from, well, no, number one is the Pell is a open space bond, open space category, and could come from the open space reserve. The townhouse is a historical, and it could come from the historical reserve. So they can't come from the same bucket.
No, it's the
They
same
could not-
bucket.
they
When
could-
you're saying the first bucket, the revenue bucket, the estimated revenue bucket is the biggest bucket. They both could come from that one,
They
is
could.
what I'm saying.
They could.
So why aren't they?
Well, because it's generally a good practice to take them out of the 10% reserves if they qualify, and if it's big enough and they qualify. Because that's restricted money, and that's kind of what you spoke about earlier.
So,
It is generally it's good practice to take them out of the.
so should we move the Pell bond down to the open space
Okay,
budgeted
now
reserve?
unless this committee always does that unless there is a reason not to. And there's two reasons not to. One is the reserve isn't big enough, and we don't want to we don't like to split grants up between one account and another because the accountants make
65
mistakes when you do that.
It's a $65,000 payment, and you have a $274,000 reserve.
That brings us to the second reason.
But the first reason doesn't count because you're saying the
Correct.
bucket's
The
not
first-
big enough.
The first reason doesn't apply because it is big enough.
Right. Okay.
So that brings us to the second reason.
Okay.
Which is why we didn't do it. The committee has been observing and participating in Chapter 61A withdrawal right of first refusals for the properties that have been coming available surrounding Silver Lake. So, right, and as of now, the town owns what's known as, well, it owns the, it owns the beach. It owns the property behind the beach, which is sometimes called Weber, but it's the Silver Lake Conservation area. Then the land trust owns a little bit of land, and then the town owns I'm going around it counterclockwise. And then the town owns some land up by the Cider Mill Pond, also sometimes called, again, the Silver Lake Conservation Area. And then the town bought the first Robinson, what we call the corner of Stowe and Route 140. It was there was 3 lots available there. The town that came out of 61A, and the town bought it. And so the Silver Lake Conservation Area was extended. And then more recently, 2 more lots came available out of 61A, and the town bought those funded by the CPA. And there remain only 2 more lots to totally own the entire, to protect the entire border of the lake, which is a pretty nice lake reservoir. And so there's only 2 more lots to go. And when and they are for sale. And so if, when the time comes that someone wants to buy those things, it's going to go up for right of first refusal. And it's the sense of the town, and it has been for many years the sense of this committee, that we want to take those so that we'll have the whole lake. And so we have been accumulating money in the open space reserve for that purpose. That's the reason.
Which I don't disagree with, but it still doesn't answer the question why the bond payment can't be coming out of there. Because when those properties come for sale, there's other buckets that money can be funded
That's
from.
a pretty big bucket, and like I said a moment ago, we like to pay the grants out of one account, rather than splitting up into other accounts. And so for the you've asked what the reason is. That's the reason, and it's to accumulate money for the in anticipation of being able to complete the protection of Lake Ripple.
If I may, though, Ken, I think Colleen has a really good point here. To me, is that our budget reserve can be used for anything. We can split up things, even though we don't like to, and this committee has previously said we don't like to just accumulate money in things when we were talking about affordable housing in the past, because we don't want to just have money sitting that we can't use for other things if we so choose as a committee and as a town. So I think not taking something that can come out of open space when we have enough money for open space is tying up that money in ways that if something was really important that this committee felt strongly for, before the Robertson property become right of first refusal, then we can't use it if it's historic preservation, for example, because it is open space money.
That's correct, and we can make that decision going forward, but we just can't go back and unchange warrants.
Yeah.
But we could make that decision next year, we absolutely could. But I would speak that to you about, to your question is, there is almost $1 million of other money available for the CPC to use. Almost $1 million, other than that, 274. And so I don't think it's going to, it never has in the past. And I don't imagine that it will in the foreseeable future prevent the committee from making any other huge grants for any other purpose.
To that point though, Ken, if we are saying 274 isn't that much compared to what we have, and we're not worried about it, then why are we worried about 55,000 coming from the bigger bucket instead of taking it from open space? That's what I'm not sure about.
Okay,
But-
yeah, and so the answer to that question, is simply, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And we don't have to do it that way going forward, and we don't. And so I'm just explaining why it was done in the past. And in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in like 10 of the past 12 years, we have taken money. We have paid bonds out of the estimated revenue.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I don't know why it was done way back then, but it was, and it's sort of like, yeah,
Yeah, and-
it's a common thing, and the accountant should read the warrants when she does her accounting.
All right, so I think I've heard Mary's name about 5,700 times tonight. I would like to invite her in and have her an opportunity to speak to the committee as well and defend herself and her numbers.
I don't
because
want to embarrass her in front. You don't want to embarrass her in front of.
I'm not
in
trying to
public.
embarrass her.
Well, it will.
It-
It will embarrass her. I don't
think
want.
your
You don't want
email
to
was
embarrass her.
really
We need to work
strongly
with her.
worded.
We can't embarrass her.
Well,
I'd love to have
but-
her come in and
Yeah,
kind of defend
I just,
herself.
I think talking about her is embarrassing her and not allowing her
Well,
to.
I wouldn't have talked about her if she didn't write this email
You can-
and force me to talk about her. I
I'm
didn't want to talk about
I
her.
mean, you talked about her in several other meetings as well, so I think she's part of this process. I think including her in the process each year at some point would be beneficial.
Yeah, we
going
just need a
forward.
way to do it without accusing her of making mistakes.
Oh, I'm
Nobody
certainly
should
not.
do that.
I would
We-
just like to see her review her numbers with us and her spreadsheet. That's all I'm asking.
And
Yeah,
I'll say
and most of her spreadsheets are ones that I created a few years ago. So
Anyway, the two main points I just have to take out of this is, number one, a phrase that I've learned to never rely on is, why do we do it? Because we always did it that way. That's never a good answer in my mind. And it's one that, professionally learned is the absolute worst reason to continue to do something is because we always did it. Yes, you can come up with, it has been done this way before, here's the why, we still agree with that why, and we're gonna keep doing it that way. That's fine. But saying it's because we did it is not something that's good. The other thing is, in technology, in IT, and software engineering, there's a term post-mortem, which is something went wrong, here's what happened, why it happened, and what we're going to do about it going forward. You're not constantly repeating the person who made the mistake's name. You're not constantly repeating, that someone else made the mistake. Not me, but they did it. You're talking about what happened and how we're going to fix it. And I think naming someone in particular and saying they kept doing this, this was them, is unproductive and not something we should continue to do. And if we're going to insist it was the accountant's issue, then we should allow the accountant to have a seat at the table and have a conversation about it. If we're just going to move forward and say this won't happen, yes, and have a solution, then sure, that's fine. We don't need to have her involved. But if it's constantly saying the reason of a mistake is the accountant, we should have them allow them to have a
So-
conversation.
I guess I'm hearing this conversation very differently. There is a process the accountant goes through, and she gives us the information, and Ken manipulates it. And it was one particular line item. Everything else Ken was talking about is how it gets updated over the time. So I don't hear like repeated stuff. I hear this is where we get the information, except for one particular line.
Well,
And,
now it's been a couple because the warrant article error, which is on here, but then the email we received last night from the town account is highlighting another issue. And I think that's the point, is that Ken gets numbers and then he manipulates them. Where is that error happening, in the manipulation or before he gets the numbers? And I think having the town accountant come in and explain their process would be really helpful as well.
Yeah, but let's not make her come in and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I counted for this."
Nobody's
not
asking,
wor-
sorry, I
nobody's
put this in
asking
the
for
wrong
that, Ken.
account.
So to me,
Let's not make her do that.
Nobody's
no, no.
asking for that.
So to me, this is like, in my line of work is you find a mistake, it's a mistake. No one's to blame. People are human. The question is get it right first and all. And then afterwards, you kind of figure out the process so you don't repeat it. I mean, similar to, we're talking the same type of
Yeah.
thing. It's just like, it's just like we in the company I work for try to create a very open thing. Like, you'll never get, there's no such thing as, bearer of bad news, because the whole idea is if we're not transparent about issues going on in projects, we, from a risk standpoint, is in bad shape. So the whole idea is to have a culture to say, yeah, there's an issue here, let's solve it. And then there's always ways to make your workflow and other things
Yeah.
better. But it's not about a blame game, because we're human and people make mistakes and stuff.
Yeah,
You typed 4 in a place that placed the title of it. It's not a big deal. You just undid it. So the whole idea is not to make a big deal on that. It's just to say, okay, is there a process?
The main thing that, the bottom line is we want to have a good bottom line.
Right.
We want our numbers to be solid.
and we want to know what they are.
And we want to make sure we understand, and that's, like we're talking about these management reports. We want to make sure everything is posted in the right place, because some things don't matter because it comes out in the wash. Other things do, like if we don't have access to this money until July 1st of next year, that does make a difference. So it's important to understand why, but it's also important to fix whatever
The process.
is.
Yeah, the way I wish this had happened, and the way it's happened in the past, is that that Mary or the current accountant would contact me and saying, "Hey, we got a problem here," and we would sit down and we put our heads together and find out, oh, that's the problem. That came from the wrong account, and then it would be, oh, we can fix it. She would say, oh, I can fix that with a journal entry, and it would have happened, and it wouldn't have caused all this excitement. If she had come to me privately, we could have fixed it.
I think that's one point that, if, I don't know the appropriate way to reach out to her to invite her to the meeting, if you want me to invite her.
Yeah, I mean,
If that's
you want to do
what,
that?
that's the appropriate way, but then also for you individually to say, we're trying to work through some of this, but if there's ever an issue, to please reach out to me first and let us try to see if we can't figure out.
Yeah, I called her as soon as I read this, but she didn't pick up, so,
She was
I
off
didn't-
today.
and she didn't call me back.
She was off
And
today.
so,
She was
She's
off today.
oh, no wonder. Okay, that explains it.
But again, those sound like disparaging remarks. I called her, she didn't call me back, and you know what I mean. Those sound positive.
I'm sure that, no, she and I have worked together for a couple of years now, very productively. And so, we've been doing very well, and she's been learning how to do these things, and
Okay.
I've been able to help her, maintain accuracy.
So one,
But I wasn't treasurer for a while, so there was a slip.
But also, she is our paid town accountant, and she's worked in other communities with CPA. It's not like she's learning CPA for the first time here in Grafton. So I think we just need to be cautious on how we're saying things and how things are being phrased here.
And maybe, Ken, you're not aware, but it's condescending, and the email to her was very condescending also. And I'm picking up all sorts of demeaning, and maybe you're not aware of it, but I'm picking up a lot of negativity and a lot of blame, and a lot of, she didn't do it right, and I was doing it right, and then I wasn't on the committee for a while, and all hell broke loose because she doesn't know her job.
Okay, no, you're doing the same thing. He did not say all hell broke loose. So
No,
let's
no.
play fair.
Okay, that's the impression he's giving.
No, but that's what you're
That's
saying.
your
He
perceived
said
perception
that.
Yeah.
of it. That wasn't
Right.
my perceived one. Yes,
Yeah,
there was discussion on it. I didn't take it that way.
Okay.
and I think the last point I would like to ask of Ken is, can we possibly, even as just a mini addendum, as a separate page or something, just get okay, the accountant gave us this new number for this month, and that's, and I updated just the basic, thing like you were talking about, that is the adjustments that, from estimations of the changes as we go. Just a little, like, okay, this was the number for this month and we updated it. Just something that explicitly calls out that the accountant gave us this and then you made your changes. Is that something that you feel comfortable being able to provide us?
Yeah, I could do that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Does it typically only fluctuate at the end of the year, like as it's closing?
Yeah, when the things that happen are, state matches, become more clear and we get guidance, and some of that changes usually towards the end of the year. And, usually, and the books, the year ends on June 30th, and the accountants take several months to get all the numbers settled. And so it's now.
It's usually that.
Yeah, it's now
3 month period. or whatever.
October. I think that they must have closed, a couple of weeks ago, from the June 30th, and that's why it took until now for the numbers to settle and to freeze.
Yep.
And she's, and she was giving me updates every time I would do a treasurer's report. I asked her for updates, and she would give me, okay, we think that the revenue was now we think the revenue was this. And now we think the revenue was yet this, now, something slightly different. And that's why it was changing. And they ripple forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of, especially because I don't know, with work you've done with selectmen, that you have really good hard numbers. CPC numbers are not. And that's one thing. We used to get our match number before town meeting. So we had hard numbers. And the state keeps rolling their numbers forward. So that's why there's so much guesstimating on so much of this stuff. And that's why it takes so long to get good hard numbers, because they're constantly updating. But until the numbers are final, you're just getting an updated number. And that makes it hard, but it's also, we're spending money ahead of time. We don't even have the money, yet we're spending because we're projecting what we're going to get. So it's like with your budget, your same thing with the town, we're going to have $76 million of revenue. They base that on prior years, whatever. With us, we're basing it on what the state is telling us what they think it's going to be, because they don't know what it's going to be, because they don't know how many houses are going to be sold and the people are going to go and get the fee from the
Get reassessed.
whatever the assessor's office, whoever collects that fee. It's like it's just this
And that's fair.
very, I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, but it's like the longer you're with CPC, the more comfortable you are with it's not a real hard number for a while after when you think it should be hard number.
No, so for me, just going over this, because I've spent a considerable amount of time and I'm very comfortable now with everything going on, but I just see areas of where we can tighten up so that we don't have to have questions like like the bond payment question, why is one coming from here and another one when they have the ability to come from the reserves? Or, again, back to the format question you said you'd get back to, is there a way to possibly format this differently so that you're not seeing the same number represented in 3 different spots, which could lead to confusion and lead to possible errors? You know what I mean?
Do you have a
Suggested
financial
form.
report that you would like to see? Do you want it to see income, expenses, total? I mean,
I have a
Log it out.
suggested format if that's what you're asking. Yes.
Yes. So I would say, if you want to share that, I don't know that you want to share with Ken.
I'll
that
share with whoever wants to see
now.
it.
No, I mean now.
Yeah.
Or later, because it's going to be 9:30 and we haven't even really started. And where's Jim Gallagher when I need him? Ready to adjourn the meeting. But if you want to talk to Ken,
Yeah, if you want to sit down and just take a look at it and brainstorm something,
Yeah,
I'd be
for
happy
sure.
to do that.
Love that.
I do have questions. I have not been. I've been waiting till the end. If that's all right. They're,
right
they're
ahead.
fairly straightforward. So I just want to make sure that I understand kind of the debate. The end field that has changed is the remaining undesignated balance. Am I correct?
For which fiscal year? Because that's big.
Which one was changing in August? and
Well,
September?
in August, it was the fiscal 2024 beginning undesignated fund balance. And that was changing because the number from which it was created the prior year ending
Yeah, I
was
get
changing.
that. I get that. But like the,
And it was line, on that sheet, it looks like line 26.
okay, I was talking about 23, I think. Right.
20, you weren't looking at
This
you haven't
was-
seen 2023 in several, well, it hasn't shown up in any treasurer's reports.
Oh, okay.
You haven't, so you haven't seen 2023 in a while because it was,
Okay, so this is
Dormant.
not what Colleen was talking about. It was 24.
24 was changing because the 23 was being closed and numbers were
Okay,
floating
yeah.
a little bit before they settled.
That's what I meant, was like the numbers that you have up in the 23 were technically still changing as it
Yeah,
closed,
the-
and then
the-
that
the-
cascades
Yeah,
downwards.
the numbers in the top section, the fiscal year revenue, those don't change because those get locked down by warrant articles.
Yep.
And so they don't change. It's the ones that change are the undesignated fund,
Yeah,
and it's
okay.
usually the initial one.
Yep.
Changes because the year before it's in flux.
Yeah. Okay, that answers that question. And then the other question I had was, there's an actual SM, which I assume is state match, and then a total, and those are different for 23, not this one, but 23. Why
Yeah.
is that? What are those?
Okay, the spreadsheet set up, so I just plug the numbers into the orange ones and all the other ones calculate. And so, when the state match came out in November, the actual state match was that,
was which?
171, 417.
Okay.
And the estimated one was whatever you see just above the top of the screen. 191. So you can see it was lower. The actual came in lower than the estimate. We had estimated 35 and it came in at 20, or it came in lower. And so I plugged in the lower number and you can see it is a minus $20,000 there, right there where it's where the cursor is.
Mm-hmm.
So it came in $20,000 lower. But the good news was that year there was a second distribution. And the second distribution was higher than $20,000, so we ended up with even more.
And that second distribution that was, I sort of remember that was not,
Yeah.
It was
Common.
Not, it was not annual.
I remember.
and,
that.
and so it was, yeah.
It was one
When
time.
they do supplemental budgets every once in a while, they can
They'll put-
actually get it passed in both the House and the
And-
Senate and signed by the governor, so that we'll get $20 million extra
Right, and
to
so-
get divvied out.
Right, so it went down 20,000 with the actual, but it went up 46,000 for a net plus of 26.
Right.
Yep.
And that doesn't, yeah, and that's just a wild card that
Yeah.
happens when that happens.
There's a bluebird.
Rare, and it's a rarer.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then real quick, the last question on the debate about the open space reserve. How has that been decided? And I should know this because I'm sure we reviewed this last year. I just can't remember. I'm assuming that's written into the warrant language where
Yes.
it's coming from.
Yeah, when the warrant is, when the
Who
warrant's
decides
approved.
that though? Do we vote on that language?
We vote on the warrant, yeah.
So the rectification there
That's
is
the time.
to change it.
That's the time to
as
do
we
it.
come up.
That's the time for its discussion.
Okay.
So what we've typically done the past several times we voted on them is we go to vote on the warrant. The treasurer tells us what fund to pull it from, and no one on the committee has objected, and we just vote on the warrant with that
Right.
fund. I don't remember any thorough discussion on which fund in the past, and I think that's
Yeah,
something
and
we should
again,
probably
with
think
that, yeah, I mean, that has to do with, your familiarity with, like, there's different buckets, and I get
Yes.
it. Concom, we have the same thing, we have different buckets. We pay staff with certain buckets based on the, fees that we get and so forth. And there's all different ones. I don't know these buckets very well, but I can figure out what the space,
And the
line is.
And money is fungible.
Yeah, it
A
is,
dollar here
but-
is the same as a dollar there.
But I think, to make it consistent, depending upon, it goes back to our plan, depending upon the plan and what we're trying to plan for. John already mentioned that, we don't go out and get projects. However, we know, like on open space, that there's a potential to get more of the Robinson property. And so then that's kind of planned in a way,
Yeah.
but it's not hard and
Prioritized.
fast. Very good word, thank you. That's prioritized, because we have, past experience that's coming, and we know that this is a high priority for
And when it does, it comes to us from the town manager.
Or if they're phased projects, because we've had phased projects in the past, so this is gonna be phase one, and in a couple years, it's gonna be phase two. So even though we don't have a dollar amount, we kind of have it on the horizon, so we know, okay, we're gonna have another, whatever that project was, coming up. So we don't, we're not shocked when some, several $100,000 project comes to us, because we know that.
When that
and there's,
happens, we could potentially plan even by having a greater than 10% into those buckets, correct?
We can, the
So there's nothing
the
preventing that.
requirement is the minimum,
Correct.
not a maximum.
But I'm just saying for when we're planning for things
Right,
that we
if
know
we
could
wanted
potentially
to.
be coming.
But then, let's say that project doesn't happen at all,
Then that'd be stuck.
then your money is, you're stuck.
Yeah,
Right.
which is what's happening right
You've
now.
got it, let's say we've
274.
done every historic preservation project in town, there's nothing left.
It's a good thing we have those bond payments though.
You know,
'cause
no,
then we
but it's
can
like, let's just say it's all done, it's all paid for, that money is, we're stuck, you're gonna have to wait until we spend $200,000 worth of, so it's, you have to be it's hard, because nothing's guaranteed, this isn't like, you're gonna have school kids, you're gonna have, office expenses, we don't, it's because this is so random, that we don't know what's on the horizon a year or two from now, that could be the next big project for us. I mean, there could be a whole new park that we don't know about, or upgrades, or we just don't know yet. Or we could have a historic building that has a huge problem that's owned by the town that we need to deal with, so.
All right. I move we approve the treasurer's report.
Thank you. Sorry, my editorial, thank you.
I have a motion and a second. I hear no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, motion carried. Okay,
Anyway, so going forward, you're gonna see the simple version,
okay.
because they're,
I get it. I mean, part of me is big on transparency. So you want to know where all the numbers come from, but then we sit around here for an hour because we want to know where the numbers come from, which is good, but it's a process that you have to go through. And sometimes a summary is good, but I'm a big believer in being transparent, so, it is what it is.
Okay,
I move that we approve the minutes for August 3rd and August 24th, 2023, as drafted with any amendments during discussion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Hearing,
I'm
my,
Well, yeah,
it's worse than normal.
So I think what Justin means is that we're gonna have to edit these a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that's why
Okay.
I was looking at it.
Like real quick, I saw my
So,
name spelled wrong.
second
and-
by.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a
second by was a
couple.
question.
There was at the first,
It's
because
the very first.
Beth was not sure of who said what when she was listening, because she didn't know voices or didn't know, and so we all know if she says stop, so she can write down your name.
That's why the highlighted in the question mark.
So she
That's what-
put some of those in there.
I would have to watch that meeting to know that one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunately the only way to do it.
Under the welcome though, I have 2 E's in my name.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. You got it right on the first one.
I don't know why and I did it in another one down here.
It's fine.
Okay.
Happens.
And I'm not Joshua.
Did I put it?
Where does it say? Joshua.
Well, come on, that was
I'm
the
gonna call
first
you that now.
meeting.
Yeah, now
I
that's your
know,
name.
now that you brought
Better
it up.
believe it.
Well, that was the first meeting, come on, guys.
That's
So make sure you get John's name right.
and on the 3rd is Colleen there.
Yeah, it's a couple times.
Yeah.
Mostly we got to get the
I
second.
think it's
so
easier
that's
just
more
to
important.
change the spelling of your name.
Oh,
because
all
it's
right.
wrong 4 times and right once.
That's what,
I'll work on that.
Find
That's
and
fine.
replace.
It's a spell check.
That might-
It's
It's
a
a
spell
spell
check.
check.
find and replace.
Actually, is this editable for me? Maybe I could just do it and send it back. Let's see.
Oh, are you clicking?
Yes.
He's clicking, yeah.
But is it a PDF though?
I don't think I
It's,
did it
it's
as
a
PDF.
document, but I think it's locked. 'Cause
Oh, did I?
I don't
Yeah,
think I
I'm,
can change it.
So I know you have a motion and a second to approve these, but I think until we get those names on all those
Yeah.
seconds, we
Yeah.
should probably just hold off on
I-
voting on this.
Okay, so
I
then,
think I agree.
do I have an amendment to the motion to hold off on?
I will just withdraw my motion with the second person.
I think that's, yeah,
I
it's
withdraw
not
my
ready,
second.
so, yeah.
Okay, so we will move
I got
on.
excited. Jump the gun.
So
Town meeting was successful. We had one article and it was passed. without, we always have, and we always want to know, why are there 8 people that always vote? You know, whatever we do, there's always like 8 people that vote against
I
whatever
think it's the
project.
same 8 people that vote against everything. They just
Like,
go there
are
to
you
vote
just checking to
no.
make sure that your clicker says no? You know what? But it's always, doesn't matter what the project is.
Yeah, I don't think it's personal. I
There's
think
always
it's,
like, no, I mean, I
across
know
the
it's not.
board.
but
People have
it's
their
like
own opinions,
Yeah.
and that's what's so great about and so frustrating about this. Because everyone
Good
doesn't
point.
think like me, but that's okay. I can live with that.
So, okay. So project updates, Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah, only meaningful update is go to the housing production plan community meeting on November 8th at 7 p.m. A lot of information in there.
At 7, and where is it?
The community barn.
Oh, that's right.
I think it's.
Do you know what night of the week that is?
It is
Thursday.
Wednesday, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
because we have a meeting on Thursday.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you guys meet Thursdays.
Yeah.
Yep, it's next Wednesday.
Yep.
Yep, okay. All right. Have you heard anything, and, or you either, have you gotten an invoice? Have you heard anything about the
Oh yeah, the rental
rental
assistance
assistance?
I haven't gotten any.
Okay.
for the
Because I know they
housing
were,
authority.
at the last meeting, you guys were talking about, you were getting started, but it's not, it hasn't kicked in.
I don't believe there's been a request yet,
Okay.
but they're overwhelmed with turnovers.
So they're
oh.
very likely,
Yeah,
Could be.
yeah, there likely could be soon, but they're up to their eyeballs.
and this actually is goal number 2, I believe, isn't it? From the plan that we just saw, that, so that we're at least 2, we're making some
Yeah,
progress.
crush it.
The town archives, I'm guessing Paul's not here, that it seems like Candy was holding off. I have more good news for the gravestones. I met with, her name was Mixie, and her husband James Fannin from Fannin Lerner Preservation Consultants last month at the graveyard, and they loved our graveyard. And it makes you real happy because you think it's like, oh man, this is not in great shape. They were so impressed. They were so excited. They were excited about our headstones. They were excited about our double portrait stone. They weren't as concerned. I mean, you're obviously concerned about the stone, but they were very reassured that the work, they could do minimal work to conserve it so that the water doesn't get in to cause the problems that we're concerned about, causing the slate to pop off. So,
Does our town staff that's responsible for that know that we've gotten the praise?
no, but I think I wrote down I need to call, because thank you for saying that. Because we walked around, because we looked at, not just at that stone, but lots of other stones. And I said, is there anything we should do, anything we shouldn't do? She said, well, whatever they're doing, I said, you'll notice you don't see weed eater marks. You don't see edger blades or anything on the stones. And she was very, very complimentary on how, because usually it's a mess. They're very, very, very rough with the headstones. And, but she could not have spoke highly enough about our so I will reach out to
It's probably Evan or William or both, and our cemetery director. I guess that's
Excuse
the
me,
title.
John.
well, 'cause I can't remember two.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Is this one particular cemetery or is it several?
It's just the Olden Indian, the Oak Street,
Okay.
which is right across
Oh,
from the
yeah.
high school.
Okay, thank you.
And, we talked about security and safety, and it's like, surprised that they have not had the vandalism, even though it's right by the high school, but it's by the police station. But she also said it's very visible. And I think because it's not a deep cemetery,
Yeah.
that people can drive by and people can see.
Yeah.
So that you're not gonna have a lot of fooling around because kids don't wanna be seen, doing whatever it is they're doing.
I mean,
at the
when I'm out
cemetery.
vandalizing cemeteries, I don't want to be seen
Yeah,
either.
right. But I just, it got me really excited how excited they were about our cemetery. So
Great.
Perfect.
Crafton Common Restoration, I can give you a little bit. Paul could probably do a lot better job. Almost all the work, if not all of it, has been done. The one thing that we still have yet to do is we're working on getting a photograph wrap, or actually two. There's a aluminum traffic signal box, or it's actually a electrical box that
Cabinet.
faces Upton Street. So we're going to use two different photographs, historic photographs, that when you're driving towards the common, it will be an old photograph of the bandstand and a group of kids and this lady dressed up like Liberty from 1920. And when you're looking at the Grafton Inn, you're going to see a photograph of the Grafton Inn
Awesome.
the way it looked, 100 years ago, which it had porch to wrap around. It was very, very different, very interesting. So you will see that instead of that big aluminum box.
Beautiful. How is it? What's it made out of? Is it going to stick on, or is
It's
it like a?
it's a vinyl. It's like you wrap a bus, and it just sticks on.
Excellent.
And so whatever it is doesn't stick out like a sworn thumb anymore. You see the picture,
Yeah, and it does
rather
now,
than
yeah.
focus on that ugly box.
Excellent.
And we're going to also do. We found a stone. We found two to put inside. So we'll have a bronze type plaque that will, give a little history, a very short history of the common, and the fact that CPC funded the restoration, preservation. But very, so
Neat.
I think they actually found it, which is nice, at Fisherville Mill, because we wanted to, some old granite that we'll use. So
That's awesome.
kind of give
When-
that.
The select board voted on the most recent change order. There was
Right.
no one there to answer questions, and they did have questions.
Did they approve it or not?
They definitely approved it.
Okay, because I don't know if Paul had talked about it. So Paul's the one that usually goes.
Right. So I don't know if that's something we should maybe just send an email. One of the questions I can remember off the top of my head is they just want to know how much money is available left for
We still have
change
like
orders.
$75,000
Right. So I don't know how to get that information to them. It was asked.
to,
but-
to Matt. It needs to go.
Yeah.
He can disperse.
Yeah, I would just send the chair an email and let him. That'd be great.
But no, we still have 75,000. Once it all shakes out,
Right.
it's a wiggly number.
Yeah. I don't know if they had more questions because it was kind of shut down after the fact that nobody was there to answer them.
I
But
think that there were two, because one of them was we had a light sensor put in the bandstand, so that because before there was no light unless you turned it on. So this way it comes on at dusk, on it, or on it.
When the sun changes.
You know what I'm talking.
yeah,
On at 6, off at 6, or whatever. That it's on a light sensor, and then for the
granite post.
the granite post that we had ordered and that ordered with the place for the conduit to go, it was shipped a year later with no groove. So we had to pay an additional, rather than have it redone or send it back, or it's just like sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, and so we just wanted it done. And I think that's it, just those two. But I will have Paul send financial to Matt. Okay. Lions Club is pretty much, I think we talked about this at the last meeting. So this pretty much can go off. The sign's up. I think the bathrooms are done. I think maybe, because I was trying to tell somebody that I knew somebody had spoken highly of
Yes.
the work, and
Beautiful.
that somebody was very impressed
Oh,
with
yes,
what was
that would
going
be
on.
me.
So I think it was Lisa, but I can't
Yeah.
remember. So, and I think Recreation 88 is finished. We did get, and that's also in the packet.
Everyone saw that.
And
The
thank you
mats.
from the new Recreation Director,
Just the point. Yep.
Adam Lapointe. And 95 North Street. Do you have any?
Well,
I know it's not great.
The information, now Adam's new, so
Right.
he's still getting updated on all the details. But the information he gave was that, it's kind of at a standstill at this point because the design company underestimated the total cost of the project. So now they're going back and they're getting a new bid package together. And they're hoping to have that reviewed next week. And then,
So I would say the bids came in higher than the previous estimate, and that there's maybe many reasons for that. I don't know, but it's just, it's outside the estimate.
Do you know, did they get multiple bids that came in? Did they get an individual bid?
That I don't know.
yeah,
I'll
I
find
don't
out.
know
I
the
haven't got an
specifics
update
of
on it, so
where the
I'll
mistake was
check.
made.
I'll check with, and again, it may be just the bidding.
No, because it's like
Yeah.
some, like for, I don't know, it's like sometimes you have to bid it a couple times and depending on when you bid it.
It's
and
also the
economy and
size.
the weather.
It's the size of the project and, you know, your pool of potential bidders and there's a lot of things that go into it, but, I mean, I just don't have all the complete story and I can get that from Leah. Find out what's going on. I don't know.
Okay.
We previously funded a plan, right, to base the bids off of? That was
Yep.
part of it? So,
Yep.
so that's still, is that still good, or we're gonna have to do that again?
No, I think, and again, I don't have all the details, and we were chatting about it ahead of time, and what they may do is a phased, or it depends upon, again, I don't know the numbers, so someone says it's way over, okay, I don't know what that means, and you know, and, yeah, I'd rather find out more about it
Okay.
before.
And at least from me personally, I'd be hesitant to say that we can take what we approved at town meeting with as the full scope of what we approved at town meeting and say, okay, we're going to split it in half and just do half now without a town meeting vote in my mind, because that's a very big,
Right.
that's a very different thing.
And again, right, yeah, and I don't know how much it is, and, you know, there's a difference between doing value engineering and changing the project.
But it also depends on what the warrant article language is. And our,
exactly.
what we typically do is make our warrant language fairly flexible so that you don't pin somebody in. But
But again,
But
it's
yeah,
it's the magnitude of it, which I don't know.
And I'd say even if the language in the warrant article is flexible, if the presentation that we did at town meeting, which was the project as we voted
Right.
on it, and the actual understanding of the voter can be reasonably said to be, we thought we were getting this, you're going to give me this small little piece at the same price. That's a big difference for the town.
Well, yeah,
And
I
I
agree
wouldn't
with
want-
that. I mean, it has to be, it's one thing if you change a material out or change a type of fence
Yeah,
to get into a budget versus eliminating the pavilion.
yeah.
I think that would be, yeah, there's different things. And
Is it a
again,
material change?
exactly, are you getting what you thought you would get, but a little different? Or are you getting something different? Don't know what that means. I don't know enough about what the budget
Yeah.
over, you know, what the bid prices came in,
Yep.
let's put it that
Oh,
way.
that's
And whether
something
they
that we
got
can-
one bid or 5 bids.
Yeah. I think that's
For
something we can
some
approach.
reason, I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like in having conversations with Jen before she left, and then Adam doesn't really have new information, but I feel like it might have something to do with, the design consultant said, this is how you complete this project, you know, this is what needs to be done, and then when the contractors came back, information was being given that said, we don't think we can do this. You
Okay.
didn't factor in this. But
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't know.
know 100% if that's accurate.
Yeah, and I don't know, and there's difference between what's on a design plan, it means methods by the contractor, and there's, you know,
Yeah.
it's, I don't know, you know, exactly what the bid went out, but I just gotta find out more about it. I
And we
don't
should
know.
have that by the next meeting,
I
because you'll
would
have
think
a
so.
meeting and I'll have a meeting
Yeah,
before
right.
then, so.
Yeah, I think the bottom line for me is, yeah, price difference is one thing, and whether that's a 1% difference or a 200% difference, we don't know yet.
Right,
And
just don't want to get the cart before the horse. Let's
Yeah.
find out.
and once
Right.
we find out that, we can take it from there and go, okay, is it a huge change and we're changing the scope, severely,
Yeah.
or not? And we can go.
no, I
Yeah.
totally get that, and living through value engineer all the time, because the bidding climate right now is kinda all over the place. It's, yeah, and
Yep.
to John's point, it may be just bid it again. I don't know, just don't know.
And at that point, then we would invite, Mr. LaPointe in to,
Yeah.
this is where we are, this is what we need to do, this is what we like to do.
Revise it.
What should we do? How do we do it?
Right. And what's,
then
what's
that's when
that
we
delta?
would say,
I think
hey,
that's the big thing,
We
yeah.
need to talk about what we're gonna do.
And then there's Norcross Playground. So that was the one that the tree came down and took out the equipment. So everything's ready to go with the contractor and they're gonna start the work in the spring. So it should be finished by the end of spring, 24th.
Good.
God, between the motor vehicle accidents at the common and trees coming down, what's going on here?
I know.
Okay.
UUSGU.
Wait, Joshua, is that right? I did think.
Before I jump in, do we have an update on the church, or did we already close that out?
The last report, it seems like Paul said they're working right now on fundraising for the next phase of the project.
Okay.
But I don't know that the current project is totally finished, but he said they haven't submitted any more bills, so.
Okay. Yep. On SGES, it is officially done. I'm sure we talked about that last meeting. It was pretty much done, but I got an official letter from Dr. Cummings, basically expressing, the celebrated the grand opening on October 12th. They were very thankful for us and even the Disability Commission for support. And he goes into more detail. The playground presented significant challenges for children with disabilities. Which is the main reason we wanted to fund it anyway. And drainage systems to help keep the terrain level going forward. And he provided a few pictures for for the new area. This is their former setup. These two pictures here with the blacktop having that, but the new design picture of the grand opening itself, and some children actually playing on the structures there. So it was a great email to receive that got added to the packet.
That new floor or whatever, that's nice. That feels nice to
Yes.
walk
Looking
on.
at it
I
right
like that.
now.
It does.
You just call it a surface.
Surface, floor. Yeah, I don't know.
That's like McDonald's Playland back in the day, that type of floor.
One of the concerns with the project, though, is it's designed for 5 to 12-year-olds, and our kids are 4 to 7. So there's a lot of equipment they can't play on, especially the kindergarten kids. And of all people, the director of our special ed at the building was never consulted on anything. So the equipment that they've taken away, supposedly been put in storage. I talked to her, I said, maybe we can come, I will work with you. And also at Millbury Street School, they don't have anything in one of their kids. Our kids has moved up, and there's nothing for her. So I said, maybe we can come up with a smaller little package to kind of help Millbury Street, and then see what we can't do with South to try to get some things for the little guys, because there's a couple things that they shouldn't be on, and there's stuff that they play on that they shouldn't play on, because it really is designed for older kids.
Yep.
So I'm gonna talk. I've talked to both of them. They reached out to me because of a third person that said, "Ask John," because he could tell you. So I'm gonna try to work with them, find out if we can come up with some things that they would like. Try to reuse some of the equipment that's in storage, and so there may be in January another little addendum to this.
Justin?
Yes.
Do you know if there was any, were there any funds left over?
I don't believe so. I think the funds were fully spent even before before it was finished, and I remember that the funding got dispersed without even our.
Right.
There was a little bit of hiccup there, so we didn't actually, make a formal approval of dispersing the funds before they were dispersed.
Do you expect the final invoices have already been completed?
I think so.
No, all that was done a year ago.
Yeah, I think they're already been
That
completed.
I didn't know this money had been spent until I saw one of these reports with Mary when we met. That's
Yeah.
when I found out, and I said, "Why is there no money in this
Right,
account?"
all right, I remember her
She said
talking
it's
about
been
that.
spent. It's because, and I don't know how, because her office didn't know, that either the treasurer or I had to approve.
Yeah, she
Any-
followed through on that.
See-
She followed through on that and
See
corrected the problem.
invoices. But the school department knew, they had the agreement, they knew how it's supposed to be handled. And it wasn't handled that way. And our money's supposed to be last anyway.
Yep.
So, but it's zero. It's zeroed out. There's no money. But also, we need, and I guess we can talk about it now too. There is no, there's a sign that's like this big that says, recognition for Dorian Parker. There's nothing that says funded by CPC. Do we want that? Do we just, we don't need a huge expensive sign, but do we want some kind of additional sign or different kind of signage there? Cause that's part of our agreement when we do agreements is that
How big was the grant?
135,000.
Yeah.
So
I think so, yeah.
It was significant.
Nice to know that the money's going for stuff like that too.
So basically, that means the sign then would need to come out of our administrative budget. That's how that's
What
worked
are
in the
you,
past.
yeah, but what are you talking about, $400 or $500? Or,
It depends on what kind of sign, because what they did is you can't, actually, where Doreen is, on the other side of the entrance, I have a picture of it on my phone, but you probably can't get it in there. It's just like a cloud shape, and it just says it dedicated to Dorian Parker. Very small. It doesn't need to be huge.
Right.
But it's just clipped onto the fence.
And I think at least for me, it being out of school and not, the kids that go there won't care if there's a, sign or not.
Believe it or not, and I'm sure you know, and that's my other thing that I want to deal with school is like to get them. There are no trash cans out there, and there is so much garbage that is left behind by the people that use that at night, in the evenings, afternoons.
But what I was
sports, but to get trash cans out there, so that's another little that may be piggybacked onto the.
Yeah, but I think even something as simple as just a very small, like I was saying, very small, a small just kind of plaque that gets just put right there saying, funded in part by the Grafton CPC or CPA funds or however we want to word it, is probably enough for this project, I would think.
I would put how much is there.
So my question is, given the style of this sign, can we ask Highway if they could possibly just make us one and pop it under like the speed limit sign, but have it say, well, I feel like there's an
Or even
opportunity there,
just
like a street sign size,
give me a minute, rectangular sign.
Like same
Just-
width.
Wasn't quite the
Funded in
word I
part
think you were
by
searching for.
community preservation.
I did not think that's what was
Means it's time
happening
to wrap
either.
the meeting up.
Rectangle, but just like right under it, the same
The
width.
same width, yeah.
Just say funded in part by
Yep.
Community Preservation Committee. That's it.
I think that might be possible with,
Does that?
if we ask nicely and say please and thank you, maybe they can help us.
I think it would be nice to, if you don't put the actual amount, is to put, funded by that, 40% funded. I mean,
We don't, because that was a question on the Roney Park, because our name wasn't first, and I really felt ours should be, because we gave the lion's share, but we were listed second, and it doesn't say dollar amount, but it just says, whoever that did the funding
right.
Should be in order of.
is giving the lion's share.
To me, it's more about, communicating that this is where this chunk of money went to, is to this playground. And it's not,
Because the school paid more than half, because they paid the blacktop
right.
for that,
And again, it's not a competition, it's more just awareness.
right?
So do you word it like thanking the town meeting voters paid in part by Community Preservation Fund, or?
I think I might say funded, depending on the sign, and Ken has done several of these, funded in part by the voters of Grafton and the Community Preservation Committee Fund, or, something to that effect, that it says the town and CPC.
Okay.
That I can work on that. Rectangle, there's your word.
I'm thinking that,
Do you put dates on it?
There's
Signs?
a date on the
Okay.
one above it,
Oh, okay, perfect.
2023.
Is that-
So that's what they would try to match is the one.
No,
That's
but
really
that's a
nice.
good idea,
Yeah.
cause I don't know that, cause that also is like, when was this built?
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot, but it says a lot. Cause it's like, oh, it's been here for 20 years, or it's brand new, and I think that's a good idea for moving forward, for signs too.
Thank you. That's one for me.
We're not keeping
Keeping
track.
score?
We're not
Yep.
keeping track.
Sure am.
And not about
Then I
SPS.
lose.
Rectangle is minus 2.
And not about the playground. But if I can have the floor for just one more second before we move on fully.
Sorry. I'm on a 10-minute delay.
What time is it? Alright.
Too late.
It's been over.
Nine.
Oh, I'm with you. This is late.
Yeah.
I'll go right ahead.
All I want to say is, I remember recently you asked about the Nipmuc Homestead.
Oh, yes,
Cisco
yes,
Homestead.
yes.
Though I haven't reached out to Ray yet. I need to do that. That's on me. But I did hear very recently that they got a grant from the help me out here, the Cultural Council.
Correct.
The Cultural Council did a grant for them to for some of their work on the Cisco Homestead.
Thanks, Josh.
From the state?
The Grafton
State?
Cultural
Oh,
Council.
Oh, okay. Because, just so you know, I mean, that's wonderful that they did, but they don't have a lot of money to give out, like
No,
$3,500 a year to 20 groups, so.
Yeah, I read
don't
recently
get
that they got some
Yeah, well,
funding
that's
from the
good.
Cultural
It's
Council,
good
so
that they,
that was a nice thing to hear that they did get some some funding. But
because
it
that's
does
also
mean that-
could lead to state, because the state cultural has a lot of money.
Yes.
It's just the locals just get a little pot.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Rural assistance, you got your 2 points for that. So, and any update on the baseline for Robinson?
It's being worked on,
Okay,
and it takes a little while. It's a lot of, it's work and bureaucracy both.
yep, okay.
Can somebody tell me what that is? The baseline report?
We have to have a baseline report for the Robinson property because there's conservation restriction, and that
Documents what the property is when the conservation restriction is instituted,
Okay.
so that
thank
you can detect changes.
All right, because I actually, I confused that with the North Street project, so I was wondering why if we already had a plan, then that would be doing it, so excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah,
Different type of restriction. Or
So that-
different type of,
and every property that we purchased has a baseline report, regardless of the Churchill Way, whatever it's called now. I mean, it had a
Yeah.
baseline, all these, because we want to make sure, because somebody, either the
Yeah.
land trust typically walks this and monitors and lets,
And compares it, what's happening, what it looks like now compared to a year ago.
Right.
A year ago and a year ago.
and I assume if you hire somebody and it's gonna change drastically, the money's gonna change, so.
it's not that expensive.
Yeah, I didn't
No, I-
understand the question.
I just mean like it's good to keep on track of it before you go ahead and put it out to bid and the scope of the project.
yeah, I think this is a little different, right?
Oh.
Ken, it's just more like,
It's like $2,000,
So-
and
It's just to like get a visual
it's a
of
report.
what's going on the property right this minute.
Okay.
So that if there are wetlands here, or if there are big old trees here, or there's
Right.
something else, they document all that, so that
Yeah.
next year when they come, the trees are all gone, they know somebody came in and cleared, I
Or
mean,
if there-
it's not gonna be
or
a
if there-
year.
if there's a pile of trash, and a butter is encroaching, or anything of that nature.
yeah, like with North Street, there's a plan to actually do improvements.
Okay.
This is more just to give a baseline so that,
What's there?
from a, more of an environmental perspective, everyone's know what's going on, what the resources, what the vegetation is and general stuff.
It's a lot of photographs,
That's very helpful, thank you.
maps and photographs.
And planning board, is that who gets this? report?
Conservation.
Conservation,
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably has to do with who has the restriction and who's ownership, and
Right.
I know we've
Well, the
definitely
town
done.
owns, then the land trust holds.
Right, yeah, and so sometimes it's the Conservation Commission that has it, and it's land trust, and so that's part of, I don't know, I've seen them come through, and but yeah,
And I wouldn't be surprised if the planning department got a copy to
I
go
would
along,
think
but
so.
As a planning board member, I haven't seen that one directly.
yeah. I know just enough about it to be dangerous, so.
okay.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carried.